Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon, co-author with Peter Vale of the digital book on Practice as a Way of Being. Find it at mylibrary.world. And now to our show. Robin Sharp is President and CEO of the Easterseals of the Capital Region and Eastern Connecticut. That's what she's doing today. And I worked back through her profile. And then before that, she was the executive director of our Alzheimer's Association. Before that, executive director of the YMWCA. Before that, Hospital for Special Care, where she was involved in many change initiatives, fundraising and designing and planning. Wow. In all these years since I first met her in 1997, when we both arrived at Hospital for Special Care, I as business professor in residence, a part-time assignment that I had to learn a lot about culture and management leadership. She has continued throughout all her years to do things that directly and indirectly affect the well-being of people with disabilities and other serious health challenges. Always with the wonderful spirit you're going to hear in our conversation, always learning, always seeing the interconnections and complexities as a benefit to her work and not in hindrance. I wish the world had 10,000 Robin Sharps. And you know what? Maybe there's 1 million Robin Sharps out there and beyond who have this desire to work within a nonprofit, within associational entities, and make them viable, keep them viable, and beyond that, connect. I think that's the good news of 2024. They got through the pandemic and they're getting stronger again, and they're doing work that no government or church or any other institution is set up to provide. In this case, Easterseals. Wow. I learned a lot with this conversation, and now you will too. Here's Robin Sharp. Folks, I want to take you back to 1997. That's when I was given the wonderful opportunity to be a business professor in residence in healthcare. That's a lot of title. While I was still a professor at Central Connecticut State University, in order to be part of what I found to be an extraordinarily uplifting culture of care. And I never expected it, but when I learned about it, I wanted to know more about it, got involved in it, invited in to spend some time working with how to sustain that culture through the managerial leadership of people from the team level all the way to the board and top leadership. So it was a heck of an opportunity. In 1997, Robin Sharp, with whom I'm having this conversation today, arrived to bolster the giving necessary to provide the extra measure of care that made that culture richer than it possibly would have been if you just went with money earned by the bed, as they used to pay for these folks in this wonderful chronic care, special care hospital for special care. So Robin, I have been experiencing, watching, and relishing how you've led your career all these years. And today you are the president and CEO of the Help me out. It's a long string of words. Easter
It is a
seals.
long stream of words. Easterseals, Capital Region in Eastern Connecticut.
There you go.
Hmm.
Connecting the capital region on our side of the river, Western River, with all of those small towns in the eastern side. Does it go all the way out to the coast, to the southeastern tip of Eastern?
We do. We do. Primarily, we serve, the Norwich, New London community
Mm-hmm.
um, in Eastern Connecticut. But yes, we go all the way out and all the way up. So
When I was a kid, we had something, and growing up in Portland, Maine, we had something called a Jimmy Fund. Does that
sure.
ring a bell?
Yes, it sure does.
And they
Yeah.
would, and we'd be in our movie theater, and we always had just enough pennies by selling bottles and stuff
Mm.
to get into the movie and get some treat. But I always, honestly, always saved at least a nickel because they would stop the movie or stop whatever, and they'd come around with a cardboard container
Yeah. Yeah.
with a hole on the top,
Yeah.
and you put your money in for the Jimmy Fund,
Right. Right.
and that's connected to Easterseals today, isn't it?
The Jimmy Fund, I believe, David, was Dana-Farber Cancer Institute
Okay, so it's still
in
going.
Boston. So it's still going on and very New England based. Um, whereas Easterseals is national. And I believe that, people probably remember Easterseals with the telethons
Absolutely.
and yes, and the phone calls. And a lot of people remember the image of Pat Boone holding a young girl with crutches, because it actually started out as the Crippled Children's Fund
Okay.
and used to send out the little envelope seals with lilies on them around Easter time. And that was a big fundraising campaign for Easterseals, and then soon became known as the Easterseals Society. And now is just, one word of Easterseals. So been around a long time, over 100 years
Yeah.
nationally.
And
Our
I'm
affiliate.
106, so I was
So
started in.
so you remember.
Well, I thought of the Jimmy Fund in part because it's the same spirit in
Yes.
my memory. It was something that I remember saving that nickel or so to do. And also the Easter seals, which came, around Easter time,
Yeah.
Easter seal. And I can still picture my mother budgeted everything in envelopes back then. It was all cash. Didn't even believe in check. So there'd be little envelopes for the church donation to this and that.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
then there would be an envelope for Easter seals. And she'd wait and it would come and she would like stick some money in there. So this is deep in the marrow of a lot of us
Yes.
who are at least now in our 80s. Today can you inculcate that feeling of giving for people with disability with so much more complexity of life and so many more competing wishes, for people to help out, and yet you're courageously doing it.
So, I think we've come so far. But one of the challenges of all nonprofits, and I've worked for a number of them in my career, as you
Yes,
started
you
off with
have.
Hospital for Special Care, and before that, the community health centers, and the YWCA and Alzheimer's Association. One thing we all have in common that I've experienced is that people always say to me, "Oh, I didn't know you did that. Didn't know your organization did this service," right? So getting our story out there and letting people know who we are and what we do and how relevant we are to solving the problems. And I find that most people that I talk to, they have a problem that they want to solve and they may not know
Yes.
how to do it themselves, and we can't do it all ourselves, right? So when we can partner with a nonprofit association that is working really hard to solve that problem, whether it's on a local level or a regional level or a national level,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden we can really feel a part of making that difference.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
relevant, was as relevant today as it was 100 years ago. and whatever that cause is for people, and whether it's, Easterseals, we serve people with disabilities and veterans, and one of our main focuses is getting people back to work, right? Or getting people to work. We believe that
Yeah,
anybody who wants to work should be able to do so in a meaningful way and have that opportunity to do so, because it is so integral in how we feel about ourselves and our ability to be
absolutely.
independent. And so that's kind of at the core of who we are and what we do. So, whether somebody it feels very strongly about that, or feels strongly about a different cause, it's something that we have to join together to make happen, right?
So you're really not in competition, if you will. I made it sound like everyone's got their ask out there, and they do, but you're not there saying, well, don't give your money to them, give it to us, that kind of thing. That would be awful, wouldn't it?
If you look at things as there's a finite amount of resources, then I guess you get that sense of the competition. But I don't think there. I think there are people that are concerned enough about all of these different things. And again, we can't do it all ourselves. And so we've got to come together, right?
Yep.
And so there are people that want to save the environment, and that's so important. That's not what Easterseals does. So people are going to give based on the I think attachment and the passion they have for that cause and that problem that they want to solve. And so there are enough partners out there, I think, for everybody to find where you know, where their passion really lies. And there are ways, in addition to giving up financially, that people can get involved in these causes that they feel so strongly about, right? So whether it's a
Sure.
volunteering time, even being an ambassador on social media, right? Share the posts, share the news, so that
Hmm.
more people can hear about things, more people can talk about the issues that are important, to you, that you wanna help solve. All of that counts.
Yeah.
All of that makes a difference.
I will reverse your timeline to before you started with Easter Seals. You were associated with the Alzheimer
Yes. Yeah.
movement.
Yes.
Very important to every family, and certainly to my age group. During that time, what was your leadership experience that propelled you through that tough challenge? And then suddenly you're in Easter Seals. So talk about the Alzheimer part of the Robin Sharp timeline.
Yeah, I think, I learned so much from that association. That's really the first National Voluntary Health Association that I was a part of. And everyone that works there is so compelled and driven by that mission. It is an
Mm,
incredibly, when we say that we're all as nonprofits mission driven, that organization above, lots of others that I've worked for, every single person there had a connection to that
absolutely.
disease and a passion for finding a cure. And what was amazing to me was, just learning so much about the science, learning so much at connecting the science to the programmatic things that were happening in the community, and the education that we were delivering throughout the community, and the research that the association was able to fund. So,
Yeah.
you know, the way we make a difference in things a lot of times is through, we provide services. We also got to look at, what are the systemic things that are happening, what's happening public policy wise that needs to be changed,
Mm,
and what's happening, research wise, right? And staying really on top of all of these things, even with serving just people with disabilities and veterans. There's research that's happening that we need to be aware of and we need to stay on top of. And there are public policy solutions to a lot of what we need to do. And so, when you look at things like Alzheimer's, before a study can get to federal funding level, it needs to get beyond a bench science, right? So you've got like the bench science that starts maybe at the university level, for example.
mhm.
You got a lot of steps before you can get that federal funding, qualify for that federal funding. And that's where these associations like Alzheimer's Association can come in. Because we could say, okay, this looks really promising. We're going to help now bring this study to the next level. And
Yeah.
without funding like that, some of those really promising, you know,
They ran out of money.
they
Yeah.
don't have, they just can't
Yeah.
move forward, right? They run
Yeah.
out of money. So it's so important to have that kind of middle level of funding and for research, and as well as bringing the awareness, the education, the public policy pushes on state and federal levels, just to make things better. So, so again, coming to Easterseals, having had that experience with Alzheimer's, we're able to look at, okay, what are the public policy solutions we need to put in place,
Yeah.
for veterans, for example, in Connecticut, right? Is Connecticut really veteran friendly? What's happening around our other, in the states that are around us?
Mhm.
Why are so many veterans choosing to leave Connecticut, and move to other states? And what are some of the things that maybe we need to look at doing?
Yeah.
And one of the things we did at Easterseals is we began a program called Veterans Rally Point in Norwich. So that is one of our Eastern Connecticut services, and it brings together a variety of services that veterans and active military families are looking for and need. So things like, behavioral health, peer support, case
Mhm.
management, legal counsel, veteran service officers, health screenings, a gym, a makerspace, employment services, all under one roof where we could serve the whole family.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a one-stop model, but for veterans and military families. And so that's been incredibly successful. And in fact, it's a model that's being looked at in other communities around the country
I'll bet.
as well.
Norwich, London area is very, very heavily occupied, fortunately, by families of active duty with the sub
Yeah.
base and others, and also it's accommodate a lot of veterans. Back in my earliest days, I helped start Mohegan Community College, now called Three Rivers, when I was the community ed guy, and we looked at the very issues that you're describing now. I'm talking 1970 to now.
Yeah.
And I'm so delighted to hear that because I knew even then that the people would come to us to try to get college work going so they could enhance their ability to make a living. And it was a drop in the bucket what we could do, and two little storefronts, and that we form a Catholic high school up on Mohegan Drive. But it felt very good every time I had a moment where I could see someone uh, connect and get themselves straightened away. We also had the mental hospital down the street, so we always had some interesting folks come through the door. It's not about me though,
And
Robin, but it is about the feeling. I want to take you back then to a very different role that you had before Alzheimer work, and that is the YWCA
yeah,
in our little city of New Britain, uh, a city of people who are living where it used to be almost too prosperous in comparison because of the booming Stanley Works and the Fafners and the others. And then when I moved there in '85 to work at the campus of CCSU, I looked around, I thought, it's kind of sad here. There's a sadness. And yet a YM, YW, Boys Club, Girls Club, it it worked against that mood. You probably didn't even see it all that much, but I sure did.
I I did, although I always felt I think New Britain is an incredibly special community. It's
Yes.
always very close to my heart. It still is. I grew up in a city, not in Connecticut. I grew up in Philadelphia, but I enjoyed that small city feel of New Britain. And
Mm.
to me, it's a community like no other I've worked in. It's a community where the business community, the nonprofit community, the elected officials, especially with the mayor that's there now, that's been there for the
Hmm.
past few years, um, all were willing to come together in a way that I haven't experienced in many other communities, to solve the problems of the community and
Yes,
to really look at,
homelessness and
yes.
addiction and some of the other things that pull down the life. I agree with you though. There was a cohesiveness among the agencies and so forth because you couldn't get along without each other. Similar to what you said now about Easterseals, and that was leadership. That was people like you who were willing to take a chunk of your time and connect with the other, the boys club, girls club, and the churches, and so many. That must have been very satisfying for you to do that work.
It's incredible to do that work, and it's incredible to come to the table with, again, the business community, the healthcare community,
Mhm.
the funders, like the foundations, and the elected officials, and just sit around a table, egos at the door, and say, okay, how are we going to solve this problem? And maybe people didn't think about originally calling the YW to the table when you're talking about homelessness, but we were there and we actually fulfilled a pretty big role in that, with the services that we provided, and then we were able to become an employer and be the fiduciary for a lot of the initiatives that were coming on. So there was a role for everyone, and people would ask me all the time about sitting at the table with our quote unquote competitors. And I said, so listen, there's, 18,000 children in this city. I can't serve all of them. So
No.
why don't we can come together and serve them all together. Isn't that better?
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
better? They do things we don't do. We do things they don't do. So again, people are gonna end up where they're supposed to be, I think.
One of the reasons I particularly love my years, 30 years actually in New Britain through the CCSU, was that it was the little engine that could kind of spirit. It was like, okay,
Yes.
no one's going to come in here and solve our problems. Hartford gets the attention, or south of, the Fairfield County, we're kind of the lost part of the state. And I just love people saying, the hell we are. The hell we are. Now let's go back all the way in that timeline to 97 to 2000 when you and I were working together at uh, uh, a hospital that used to be the poor for, uh, for the poor uh, Catholics in the town because the regular hospital wouldn't accept Catholic physicians. So they took this little town hospital and in Britain, what did they call it before New
Written
Britain?
memorial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the Britain Memorial. And the leadership, which you and I tapped into, said, no, we're not going to let these people have substandard conditions. We can care for them at the bed, but there's a lot more needed. And that's where the fundraising came in. And by the time I arrived there in 97, they had raised the money. It was a miracle that they raised the money for the annex, they called it. Uh, and they got that part going. That's when I arrived. And then the same leadership, Dave Crandall, John Votto, and the board said, hey, continuum of care, remember that? We let people leave here somewhat rehabilitated, but is there a place where they can go to continue to take care of their physical well-being? And the answer was no, they can't go to Planet whatever it is and what all those they just let themselves go. So the vision was let's have a fitness center. And I did a little research on that to see what the need might be with some of the therapists. And then they said, well, uh, what one of the best ways to be fit is therapy, water therapy, and water aerobics. Lo and behold, they raised the money for that pool, which I spent all of 20 some years before the pandemic swimming 3 mornings a week, taking aerobic classes and benefiting from it a lot. and that was all done with, oh no, there's no possible way that you could get this done, and yet they did. And wasn't it great to be part of that?
That was amazing. That was actually one of the first programs that I managed at the hospital. Was, as part of the design and construction of that aquatic complex
That's
and
right.
fitness center, and then oversaw the management of that for a few years until I moved over to fundraising full time. So, yeah, that was is a very, very, like you said, the culture there was this incredibly, it was very, felt like you're part of a family.
Yes.
Um, and never threw our hands up in the air and said, oh, well, we can't do that. If there was a problem to be solved, we were going to figure out a way to do it. Um, you know, just incredibly cohesive leadership team, caring from, every single person that worked there, no matter what the position, um, incredibly generous employee group in their support
Oh yeah, they'd raise
of
thousands of dollars every
hospital.
year toward
Yes.
toward the pool or to the aquatic fitness center. It was
Sometimes towards
amazing.
that, sometimes towards other equipment for whatever it was that we needed
Mhm.
to raise money for. It was just, we had a lot of fun with it.
Mhm.
And it was just always so moved by the generosity of the people. And that says a lot about, how they felt about the work they were doing.
And the drumbeat through all of that time, because I was there as a happy observer
Mm.
and somewhat participant, the drumbeat always was, uh, our patients deserve the very best we can
Yeah.
do for them,
Yes.
with them,
Yes.
A, and B, they all have families, and most of them live here in New Britain. So if we can do some things in the community, for example, dental care, free dental care, so many other wonderful initiatives, then it's ultimately serving our patients. So it's all stemmed back to each one of the persons that spent sometimes the rest of their lives there in the ventilator, or those who happily left after terrifically serious accidents. And it did so much for me as a teacher, because I'd go back and teach my classes in leadership and health, and quality and so forth. And I always had a um, a rolling script in me that said, organizations can be better if you make sure that everyone has a voice, which is what they did. Remember going to those meetings, the 24-hour meetings every
Yes.
quarter?
Yes. Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
sit
Because
in
we weren't going to
three
leave
o'clock in
anybody
the
out,
morning.
right? Just because you don't work first shift doesn't mean you're
Third
not
shift
getting
always had
access
a
to
meeting.
leadership, right? So,
You guys were there,
24
and
hours.
it was terrific. All right,
Mhm.
so I'm rolling the camera as I'm watching my time, and there's so much more about the Robin Sharp timeline here. But so when you left hospital for special care, is that when you started the Y?
At the YW. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
you stayed in the Britain and kept
Stayed in New
extending
Britain.
yourself there,
And
and
I
then
think,
on to.
learning from the hospital that, we were a nonprofit hospital, right? Because all hospitals in Connecticut
Mhm.
were. Um, but also learning from that, we're still a large employer. And as a large employer and as a nonprofit, we have a responsibility to our community. And I
That's
think
right.
that that's where some of those things that you're talking about, the dental clinic, the sports programs for people with disabilities, that's where that all kind of came from, was what's needed in our community,
Yeah,
and what's our role in needing to be a part of the solution.
you caught the bug. I remember, one of the things that was always sort of on the policy agenda that you may remember was the concern that they were not going to get enough people to come in to take the places of those who eventually retire, caregivers, particularly bedside care. And so they thought, if we could, how can we bring people to come here when they have all kinds of choices? Well, Maria Pietratuano, who said she'd never retire. She'd just keep doing other stuff, always kept doing things for the hospital. So Dave Crandall and John Pato said, okay, New Britain High School,
Mm. Mhm.
almost 3,000 kids.
Mhm.
Let's see if we can create an academy within the high school.
Mhm.
Folks, this has never been done. No one ever did it. Let's start finding a way to get these kids to think about becoming health practitioners of any sort. Because we're talking about diversity. There's like 100+ languages spoken there in this high
Yeah.
school, and every possible connection to different cultures. And they put down the flag in the middle of that high school and said, we're going to be our academy. If it's 5 kids, 10 kids, we're staying and we're going to make it happen. Do you remember how you were kind of part of that in a way, weren't you?
So I believe, and I have to go back to timing wise, it may have started, discussions may have started when I was still at the hospital, but I was mostly at the YW when that was
Yeah,
taking place and
I expect it
forming.
was because you were
That
trying to get young women, girls to also think about healthcare
that
as a field.
was an incredible partnership of the Chamber of Commerce, the businesses
Mm-hmm.
in the community, the healthcare community, and the education system. And I think I
That's
left
right.
the education system out of my list of partners that would always be at that table. And whether it was the public schools, the university, charter, everybody was there. And so again, a hugely important partner. And that healthcare academy, I believe, is still in
Oh,
existence.
it's booming.
Yeah,
And
but that was really a large community and the funders, the foundations, American Savings Foundation was part of that,
yes,
starting as
yes.
well, Community Foundation of Greater New Britain.
Yeah, still
So,
going. And so
you
a
know,
few years after it gets started, a business professor who was a Central alum came to me because Maria sent her and said, "Could you uh, let me talk about an idea? The Health Academy is having so much success. I'd like to start a finance academy or business. They called it finance,
yeah.
uh, and uh, and there's a national organization that charters these, and I want to go after it." Now, that was me, and then we pulled together 3 or 4 more people, and we sat around a table, and we looked at it. We thought, look at the standards of this organization. My God, they assume you've already started with a boatload of money.
Mhm.
You know how much money we had? None.
Mhm,
Not
mhm.
a penny.
Yep,
Just
yep,
Sandra, who I'm sorry, I can't think of her last name, and it was the same spirit though, because we saw that
mhm,
example of the Health Academy. We
yep,
saw the kids who
yep.
found purpose in their lives, proudly wore their scrubs on Thursdays. It was like Scrub Thursday. And we said, I was in a business school. And I said, business can provide a tremendous way of life for people, but they have to have a positive feeling about business
Right.
and about themselves as involved in business. So yes, we got it going. Now, when I stopped and retired in 2016, it had reached some of the near top tier of certification for that finance academy at New Britain High School, and it also is
Yeah.
flourishing. Now, folks, if you drove by a New Britain High School in a rough kind of a neighborhood that you're going, oh gee, how do people, you would be amazed at what those kids and the teachers
Mhm.
believed that they not just deserved, but they wanted to work on it. And it's so these are great stories. Now I have only a few minutes now after telling you all my story, and I'll connect to your story, which is how it works. Uh, if I were to find a way to peer inside of you,
Oh gosh.
and I would look for a pilot light that continues to light up every time there's a new challenge for you to be as instrumental in the good works that you've been involved in as long as I've known you. Uh, why does that light stay lit? Is there anything that could blow it out so you just don't say, I'm done. I don't want to do this work anymore. It's too exhausting. I want to sit home and read a book.
Well, that's what vacation's for, right? I think we all have those days. I certainly have those days where things are really hard.
Mhm.
You don't know where some of the money's coming from. You know, if you can continue a program because the funding is iffy. There's a government shutdown looming, and so how are we going to get paid, for the contracts? So we're providing services for and the people that we're serving, what's going to happen to them. So there are days it's really hard and you question, but for me, that light is probably, I feel the need to be part of a bigger picture. I want to get up in the morning and know that whatever work I'm doing is going towards making somebody else's life better.
Wow.
And that's what keeps me going through the challenges.
Well, you've never wavered in well that we've gone through today in this conversation. You've never wavered, Robin. And I don't think you ever will.
I don't think so. I also love, creating this next generation of leaders. I think that's something was fortunate enough to have incredible mentors in my life, and in my career. And I feel really strongly about, our responsibility as leaders to serve that role as well and develop this next generation leaders. And so one of the things I love the most is seeing people that, that I worked with go on and succeed incredibly well. So that's great.
And that's going to continue to happen until you get to be my age, Robin. Then you might say, "Oh, okay, I'm 80."
Okay.
I'm 80 now.
Yeah, but then you do things like this, David, so you're still doing it.
Well, I
You're
am.
still
And
educating. You are still, right? You're still doing it.
My pilot light hasn't gone out either. And I don't curse the darkness because I do have that light and you have that light. And I'm so glad now that people listening know more about Robin Sharp, who is the president and CEO of Easterseals, Greater Hartford,
Capital Region,
and Eastern Connecticut. And I'll be chasing you down months from now because I know that you're going to push through the looming shutdowns and all the other threats, and you're going to have even more great successes too. And they won't be your successes. The good part of it is there'll be the people who needed your organization who will feel more successful in their lives.
Exactly.
Such a deal, huh?
Yeah.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for listening to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. If you'd like to hear more, go to Automatic, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube. And please consider purchasing our book on practice as a way of being at mylibrary.world. It's a digital book with lots of features that you do not see in a conventional book. So once again, thank you, and I look forward to you listening again. Oh, and one more thing. Please check out our webpage at enactionresearch.info.